Well, welcome everybody to episode number 13 of KC Grid Talk. My name is Kaleb Vieska, as always, and joining me here this weekend are my two very special co-hosts, Emory Lida and Alexander Searle, and with a couple of special guests as well. The likes of Josh Hotz and I believe Nick Terlecki will be joining us here later on tonight as well. But for those of you joining us, thank you very much as we get set to unpack a very, very action-packed round number two for the Stars Championship Series, the King of the Castle. So first, let's bring in Emory Lida, the guy who was actually on site with us this weekend, working behind the scenes and a little bit on the mic today. This past weekend. After our very own Xander Clemens, unfortunately, got the flu, and Emory Lida a little bit under the weather this week as well. But Emory, besides all the sickness, besides all that, I guess, fun stuff, how was the weekend, and what were your thoughts about it as a whole?
Yeah, Kale. I mean, it was a really good weekend altogether. I think we kind of battled through a lot of stuff going on as a team. Obviously, whenever the boss man goes down, it makes things a little bit more challenging for me. That meant Saturday, instead of being on the switchers, I was on the mic, and I had a lot of fun with that. It was good to kind of get back in the game, so to speak, on the national side of things, and then obviously on the production side. I mean, the Stars weekends, the Pro Show weekends in general, whether it be Stars or Scusa, is a lot of fun. And I mean, I think in general, like, it was a productive weekend. I'm glad that we were able to get through everything with a lot of the crew kind of starting to get sick. Unfortunately, after the weekend, I started feeling under the weather, got diagnosed with the flu, and it's been a gradual recovery. But I think I'm glad that I made it through the weekend without ultimately catching it.
Yeah, well, that's really good to hear. And you look great, man. I mean, you wouldn't even know. Emory Light is on his flu game podcast today. So, hey, so someone get this kid a towel and a Gatorade for this Michael Jordan like performance that he will have tonight. But another guy, he wasn't on site this weekend, was racing, and I believe was racing from what he said. Alexander Searle, you weren't on site this week, but it seems like you missed out just a couple of sicknesses and a very, very good weekend for racing, which involved a lot of rain and a lot of dry racing. As a viewer and as a spectator this week, what were your thoughts of the weekend as a whole?
Yeah, it looked chaotic. Looked like it kind of left drivers on their toes a little bit in terms of the inclement weather that came, through the racetrack. We had some slicks on rain weather type races, so it was always fun to watch. And whenever I could tune in to all the races, it seemed to be pretty action packed for you guys.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say the one thing that I think I'm glad that I missed out on was probably some of the sicknesses that was roaming around, but. We got to witness. We have a flu game going on right now with Emory. We got to witness a flu game with Xander. So I
Yeah.
think overall, pretty good weekend.
Yeah, so not a bad weekend to say the least. And another guy who didn't have a bad weekend at all, we'll bring him into the show now. The one and only Josh Hotz won a pro moto here this weekend. So we'll give him a round of applause for that. Round of applause to Josh Hotz won a pro moto, I believe Pro Moto 2. And his driver, Nicholas Terlecki, won Pro Moto 1 as well. So not a bad weekend for the Hotz driver development team this past weekend, right, Josh?
Uh, Honestly, everything went about as well as we could have hoped. Unfortunately, the rain pretty much only benefited me. I think Nick went backwards a few spots, and the KA guys went backwards a few spots as well. It would have been nice if maybe we could have gotten out first. I could have given them a few tips prior to their sessions, but what are you going to do? I mean, it's always cool to be involved in the pro show at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, very good to be involved in the pro show, and you have been involved in both the X30 side of the pro show and the OKN side of the pro show. Whenever you talk about powertrains and all that fun stuff, what are some of the big differences that you've seen really with the OKN package and the X30 package, whether it's price, whether it's customer base or whatever it may be with both of the engine packages.
I mean, I think the OKN is a little bit more expensive, just getting going with the kit. However, it seems to be, run well. Between Nick and I, we really haven't had many failures, whether it be reeds or, anything on the engine side for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
I think I broke one set of reeds last year, and that was when I was breaking an engine in. ironically enough. Other than that, everything's been good and everything's ran well. The carburation can be a little bit finicky depending on, which carburetor you decide to run. But overall, we've had a really good experience with the package, and I think it helps. We have a good thing going with Greg Bell and Mega Power Engines. I mean, he always seems to provide really good track support and a really solid package for our team.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds good.
Josh, let's talk developmentally. I mean, ever since you guys pretty much the beginning of last year, especially in Nick's case, but for you as well, really started putting their focus towards the 125cc, whether it's the X30, whether it's the OKN. Last year was kind of like, you had some growing pains. You guys were quick at times, but this year you've really started to find your stride. You here at the King of the Castle, but Nick throughout the year so far, especially on the OKN side. I mean, what do you think has been the biggest change that you've noticed from last year to this year?
I think we're really just both understanding the tire composition a little bit better now, and kind of understanding how we have to manage at the beginning of the sessions versus pushing a little bit harder, as the sessions are going on. So I think just a more general understanding of the chassis and the tires. I think that really helps, as we progress throughout the weekend. And obviously, we get the new tires for most of the finals. So I think, we're kind of in a good spot with our progression there. So I just, yeah, I mean, a constant, trying to grow, trying to improve, and take notes where we can, and really try and just continue to progress our knowledge on where everything kind of goes to as the weekend gets into Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, and Josh, I mean, I know that you've had a few heat wins and over the years a lot of good podium runs, whether it be in K or X30 or even OKN as well. But this weekend, to my knowledge, was the first official national win for Coach Driver Development. So how does that what does that mean for you, both of us as a team owner and also someone that's taken a lot of pride in Nick's development over the year? Kind of what does that sort of mean to you, especially knowing how you did it, winning Moto 1, Moto 2, and then obviously the final as well?
Yeah, it means a lot. I know how hard Nick works, how hard he's worked the last few years, as we've grown together. So for him to really finally put it together, I mean, he's led laps at a lot of events. He's put in a lot of really good drives that just haven't necessarily, ended on the top step of the podium. We've came close a lot of times, leading up to this weekend. So for him to really just, settle in and, drive to honestly a pretty commanding victory was really cool to see. And I'm glad I was able to, share the track with him and see it firsthand.
Yeah, sounds good, and that was one of my questions too, right? I mean, I know that felt really good whenever Nick crossed the finish line at first in that first spot, but you were in the lead for that main event for a couple of laps as well. Very very early in that race, I believe it was about the second lap where you were in the lead, or second or third lap around there. But I mean, you were up there, and I mean, I have to say, myself and Alex Searle really doubted you, and weren't. For better words and for better terms, we really weren't familiar with your game. And I told you that as well on the Sunday morning. And I was like, dude, like, because whenever we spoke on the Friday night, you were like, if it rains, like, I'm definitely going to be up there. And I remember you telling me that. And I was like, yeah, all right, Josh, like, like, yeah, like you're a big guy. Like, I believe it. You'll be up there. But then when you did it on the Saturday afternoon, I was like, all right, like, I definitely doubted Josh, like, in all sense of the word. So, it was a very, very good showing for you. But I mean, leading laps as well, like, how good did that like feel? You've been in the seat for, I think, a lot more than you've been in recent years. So, how is it being back in the seat so much across all series as well?
Good. Honestly, it felt really good. And, as much as it sounds like hindsight, is 2020. I saw Nick kind of sliding around a little bit at the beginning, so I just wanted to kind of calm him down. So I, took the lead, helped him kind of settle into his groove, or at least that's what my goal was at the time. But it was cool to lead some laps, get a few times around, crossing the stripe out in front of a lot of really strong competition. Unfortunately, we got a little aggressive on the setup after not having a warm up on Sunday morning, and The kart faded pretty quickly, but it was still cool to be out there and kind of show everyone around for a few laps.
Yeah, and I mean, let's talk about the Moto 2 victory. We won't talk about Moto 1 for you because that didn't end so well. But Moto
Yeah.
2, you know, Rainmaster, so to speak, you made the 3 wide move into turn 1, diced through the field, and then, I mean, we talked about it on the show back at the preview for Trackhouse. I said you'd get up top 5 in the rain. Did not make such a prediction this week because we didn't think it was going to rain, and then it did. But, you know, talk to me about kind of how you were able to develop that skill in the rain, because this isn't something that's really new for you. I mean, I have a trophy back here from Ocala 2019, but to be completely honest with me or with you, you kind of yarded me in that race. So like, it's something you've been good at for years. Just talk to me about how you were able to develop that skill in the rain.
I mean, I think it definitely doesn't hurt that I am a little bit taller. To be fair, I did come across the scale 16 pounds heavy in Moto 2, so I feel like I might have been at a little bit of a disadvantage as well as the advantage of being tall, but it's here nor there, right? But I think it's just kind of the confidence, and after Moto 1, I think it might have been maybe wavering a little bit with trying to push the boundaries of the circuit. I definitely feel a little bit better with the wet tires on in the wet track versus the slick tires and the wet track. And I just, I feel like I'm able to kind of push the boundary, let the cart roll, and really just be patient on the accelerator and, keep everything on the track going the right direction.
Josh, I know you're at the shop right now prepping for the next race weekend. I mean, it's rare we get to talk to a team owner who still is actually in the seat at the same time, almost simultaneously on most weekends. So walk us through kind of what the behind the scenes work is like for you guys at Hotz Driver Development.
So I usually try and get back to the shop in Wisconsin, whether it be Sunday night or, early Monday morning, depending on how far we have to travel. I go to my day job until as early as possible. Ideally, I like to get out by 4:00 and get back over to the shop, start prepping carts. I mean, lately it's been a little bit more hectic with having more drivers, but I'm not complaining about that. I love being able to help out as many young pilots as I can. But yeah, it takes a lot of late nights at the shop between weekends. Ideally, it's nice when we get a weekend in between. That we have a little bit of a break. So this weekend is nice because Pro Tour is not till whatever next weekend is, the 12th through the 16th. But yeah, it's pretty much nose to the grindstone from the time we get back until the time the trailer rolls out on Wednesday morning or Tuesday night at times.
And another thing here, Josh, I know we were talking about before the interview, kind of you were parked pretty far away in the pits, I'd say, and of course with the rain, it gets a bit muddy back there. So, I'd say maybe next time you go to Newcastle, you kind of hope it rains again and get that muddy pit spot, because it looked to be pretty lucky for you guys, I'd say, this weekend. But obviously the pace was there all weekend long, and I think it's super impressive what you guys have been able to do, especially on the 125 package. I mean, where do you see your program heading, maybe for the rest of the year and a couple of years now? I mean, what's kind of like the big goal for you guys, especially growing into kind of a big household name, I'd say, now in karting?
I think we have a really good base going with a few of our regular drivers, and they're starting to show a really consistent pace that matches guys that are winning or guys that are in the top 5. So I think going forward, I'd like to see a lot more consistent top 5 to 10 results, and then obviously getting to the top step of the podium is always the goal, and it doesn't really need to be stated, I guess, right? But yeah, I think going forward, I'd just like to see a little bit more solid results. We just have to put a couple weekends together where we don't have a bad heat race or a bad qualifying effort, and put ourselves on the front foot going into the final.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about the other classes, some of the younger drivers you had, I mean, outside of Nick's win in the final and your success in the Pro Moto, it was a pretty good weekend for the rest of the 10 in general. I mean, probably the highlight, I think, has been Abernathy getting a top 10, one of his better weekends. So just talk to me about how the rest of the 10 went and kind of what that meant for you as well.
Yeah, until the the pre-final where it got, damp for pretty much everyone's session, we were all pretty much hovering in the top 10. Unfortunately, the wet weather hurt the other 3 drivers a bit more than it helped. Benham went backwards a little bit. My youngest driver, Emerson Lane, went backwards a little bit due to an incident. And Feldstein was a little bit off in the wet. I think we had a little engine issue, but he went backwards a little bit after running in the top 4 to 5 for the other 2 heat races in KA Senior. So it was tough to see where everyone was at in the dry, and then to kind of go backwards a little bit in the pre-final to hinder the starting spots for the final. But overall, I think there were a lot of really positive things to take away from the weekend for everybody.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So, Josh, we thank you very much for joining us, but we know you have a pretty busy schedule all year round, right? You're driving in not this weekend, but the weekend after that at the Motorsports Country Club of Cincinnati for the SCUSA Pro Tour, and a home race for you, right? Going back to Badger Kart Club at the United States Pro Kart Series. Just talk to me a little bit about, having that race, going back to a home track for you guys and an MCC in 2 weeks' time, I guess.
Yeah, MCC's been a track that we've had a lot of good pace at in the past, so I'm looking to carry that over to the Pro Tour in 2 weeks with everyone that's going. Honestly, they've all really looked good there in the past. And then going into the Badger races in Dousman, Wisconsin, we have the shootout, which would be the 22nd and 23rd, I believe. There's a lot of money up for grabs, Swift, KA Junior, KA Senior, and X30 Senior. So I really encourage everyone to get out and make that event. This is not an ad, by the way. But there's a lot of money up for grabs. It'll be a really good, fun weekend for development and getting ready for the USPKS race. And obviously those guys always put on a really good event. So I really hope that you're all able to make it out for the beautiful Wisconsin Grand Prix or Badger Grand Prix up here in it's not so sunny lately, Wisconsin. We've gotten a lot of rain, but the weather should turn by the time those races come around.
Hey, a second, Emory here. You're saying beautiful Wisconsin, acting like you don't have the most aesthetic background out of anybody else here. So sun is shining, a lot of greenery here. So, something to take from Wisconsin. Go ahead, Emory.
Yeah, I was just going to say well, I was going to say the last time I went to Dousman, on the podium, they gave out the cheese cows. It was like one of the things that WK did. So I was like, I don't know if Mark Coates is listening or whoever is listening, but, in addition to a trophy, I think it'd be a pretty good idea if they brought either some curds or one of those cows again. Maybe like a giant cheese cow for the winter.
A little incentive.
Yeah. But Josh, as I guess we end this first segment with you here, we usually give the floor for you to promote yourself. What's coming up for the team? What's coming up for you as a driver, for your other drivers, and just where people can find you on either social media, whatever it could be.
You can follow us on Instagram at Josh Hotz Driver Development, Facebook at Josh Hotz Driver Development. We'll be at Pro Tour. We'll be at the Stars Championship Series, USPKS, some test weekends here and there. But we really try to support everything, make all the races that we can. And I think I'll be racing the majority of those events in X30 and OKN. So it should be a lot of fun coming up, a lot of action. Watch for us out there.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here, Josh, and it's been great having you. A pleasure always seeing you at the track and getting back in the seat, taking some wins now. So pretty good. So a big thank you from all of us here, Josh, for taking the time out of your night to hop on the show with us and join us.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
You as well. Josh. So there you guys have it from Josh Hotz, Emory Lida's team owner and coach and team driver, whatever you could call it. But yeah, Josh is a great guy. As we dive into the very, very busy first segment that we have, a lot to unpack here, boys, after what was a crazy, crazy race across all the motos and across the main events as well. So a lot of big storylines coming out of this one. Obviously, Hotz driver development. Emory, you got to tell Josh. It's a very I guess tongue twisting name that you guys have there. But anyways, swept the heats, swept the weekend, I guess you should call it. So they had a good weekend. A couple of other big ones. We got some movers. Fox and Son had a much better weekend. Aiden Fox was up there in the field as well, finishing on the podium. Spoke to him on the podium as well, and he was super happy to be up there. So it was good to see Aiden Fox up there throughout the weekend as well. So Alex, you're watching from the sidelines this weekend, but you could definitely tell that it was a bit of a sigh of relief seeing that Fox and Son team at a track that they're always so good at be up there in the main event and have a much better weekend than what they did at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, because they just lacked the pace, whatever it was, engine, or had mechanical issues throughout that weekend and just kind of set them on the back foot. And definitely with this weekend, it was much better for them to be up there on the podium.
Yeah, a sigh of relief is definitely the right terminology to use. I mean, you go back to Charlotte, it wasn't really a pace issue for the Fox and Son crew, especially on Aiden Fox's side of things. There's a lot of mechanical issues, and then you start getting in your head, you start losing practice time at a track that we already don't go to very often. So for Aiden Fox, it was such an unlucky weekend for him throughout the first round of the Star Championship Series at Charlotte. But to go to a track that he had success in last year here in Newcastle, where he won in the OKN class, to come back and assert himself as still a contender in the OKN class. It's going to be tough for him to claw back in the championship because of a rough weekend. Consistency, as we know, in the championship is very key. So for Aiden Fox, he did everything he could this weekend. I mean, he was up front in that final. Terlecki just had a lot more pace towards the end of that race. That was just unmatched. But for Aiden Fox, really, really impressive. Impressed with what he was able to do. And for the Fox and Son crew, if he can continue that pace for the rest of the weekend with, we had some stars in the class have rough motos. It's not like it's over for Aiden Fox in the championship. So I'm sure, like you said, sigh of relief for these guys. They know they have the pace. They got rid of the gremlins in terms of the motor issues of the OKN side of things. So I think for Aiden Fox especially, but for the Fox and Son crew as a whole, the pace is there. They're back. They figured it out, and so kudos to those guys for not maybe getting in their head after Charlotte and getting out of their system and saying, round 2, it's a new round. Let's get it sorted.
Yeah, Emory.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a good weekend for Aiden. I feel like in some sense the track position probably helped him a little bit in the final, just being able to be on the front row, being up at the front of the field in general. But I mean, in the final still, I mean, the pace to match Diego Ramos and Kaleb Gafera, that was still really impressive. And I think that it goes to kind of goes to show just how good of a driver he is around that track. I mean, we saw him last year, Wing King in the Castle. We saw him in the past as well, whether it be Route 66 or other Stars races, put it up towards the front of the field. So, I mean, I think it's a good track for Aiden Fox. I think the rest of the team as well. Aiden Lorenko showed good signs. We saw a lot of good pace from Wesley Gunmore as well, even though he had a DNF in the final. And I mean, I think in general, it's a good momentum builder for that team.
Yeah. Very, very, very big momentum builder for that entire team. And I know they're going to be feeling good coming out of that weekend with a podium. But a couple of guys who I don't want to say had a weekend to forget, but definitely struggled much more than I guess others. Diego Ramos, that Burrell team was super quick all weekend long, but they just got into a couple of incidents with a couple of other drivers, and then in the end just didn't have the pace to it. But that being said, we're going to see, one of the viral moments that went viral out of the weekend. A t-shirt was made out of it, which you can actually buy at getpride.com, where you'll see the nice past is what they call it. But we're going to run through, I guess, the set of incidents that happened in the OKN final after, it was just, I believe this was the only big incident that we had it wasn't in the final. It was throughout the motos. But we're going to run through this really quick. And don't really want to overshadow the good racing that we had all weekend long. So we'll take it back. It all started, I guess, in the first couple of laps when Kaleb Gafera and Diego Ramos got together. So we're going to run through this here.
From 2 Gartlings back into the shark fin, he ships it in.
So if you guys are watching this at home, it was a top 3 battle with Terlecki, Ramos, and Gafera. And this is the first bit of contact that they made. It was just side by side in between Ramos and Gafera, and then they made contact just on the exit there. Ramos is taking his racing line, Gafera is on the outside, and they just make wheel to wheel contact. And that was, I guess, the first bit of it. The I guess actual contact that we saw was this one here, and this was what took Ramos out of the first moto. This is what took a couple of others, put him in the grass. But at this point in the race, I mean, in the first moto, it was dry at the start, and we were getting a lot of dry racing, a lot of side by side action. And then you get to like halfway through this race, about 6 minutes in, like 3 minutes to go. And when I looked back, I actually realized it was the last 2 laps of this moto. Whenever it started raining sideways and the track got wet, everything was wet. And I think myself and Emory are just watching it like, holy crap, dude, like it just started raining. Everybody's on slicks. Like, this is insane. And it just created for some great racing, and then some other incidents such as this one that I'm about to play. And at this point, I mean, Emory can really get behind this one. They're slipping inside, and you see the difference in lines already. Gafera here looks for a move on the inside of Ramos through this kink, and then they get together a little bit. Terlecki goes in the lead, but already, like, you see it on our camera lenses, super, super wet. Everybody's just on the absolute limit. And I'll just be quiet for this next section because it gets a little bit wild.
Gafera goes a little bit wide, and it's in the dirt. And here comes Keikai Haunino up into P2 here, looking on the inside. Gafera out of nowhere, a dive bomb there, takes Diego Ramos out in the process, and Keikai out of nowhere.
So that was pretty much what we saw. And to break it down, from what I heard, Gafera was a little bit upset with Ramos about the incident that I showed earlier, and then was wanting to get back up to the point as quick as possible. So to run through this again, I mean, he goes wide there on the exit, and then sees a gap here, and it's still kind of dry at this point. Looks to go on 3 of them, and then Ramos there is on the outside, and just they all, I guess, make contact. And an unfortunate end to Ramos's first moto, but to break it down here, boys, thoughts on the incident and just a quick recap of it.
Yeah, I mean, first off, talking about the first contact with Kaleb and Ramos, I mean, I felt like that was more or less racing incident. Like, you come in the green corner, really naturally there, the kind of profile of the corner is going to take you out wide. So the guy on the inside is, if he ships it in there, is always going to kind of slide up into the guy on the outside. So I felt like that in itself was a racing incident. The one into the kink as well, where Kaleb kind of shipped it in when it was already starting to get wet. Like, I mean, yeah, he kind of pushed him off the track, but it was also a racing incident. But you get into that corner, in the scale tower corner, and I honestly don't necessarily think that Kaleb was trying to go for the lead there. I think in the dry, that's definitely not really a 2-1 overtaking zone by any means.
Correct.
Really barely on the brakes. In the wet, that's maybe a little bit different, but I mean, just the angle he took in the corner, he was not making the corner. Even if Ramos wasn't there, there's a good chance Caleb's in the middle of the scale house at the end of that one. So I honestly, it wasn't malicious by any means. I definitely don't think that Kaleb would have sacrificed his own race just to get back at Diego for something that happened 6 laps earlier and really didn't have much of an impact on the race for either of them. But I do think I'm a bit surprised that it was not a penalty, because if you look at the incident, Kaleb comes into the corner completely out of control. I don't think that it was a corner that he was going to be able to make without any sort of massive changes. And so he's already come into the corner. He's already missed the corner, basically. And he's essentially along for the ride, slams into Diego. I mean, the fact that he broke that much later than other people, like, yes, it's wet. Yes, that should be a mitigating factor. But I think ultimately the responsibility of that incident lies squarely on Caleb's shoulders on that one.
Correct.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you just said there, Emory. I would be, shocked if Kaleb, like you mentioned, decided to throw his race away for the maybe a little bit of a hip check from Ramos. Really, it's two drivers going side by side through a flat out section of the racetrack that had no impact on the outcome of the race because Kaleb actually got around Diego anyways. And then we saw the second contact happened towards the cell tower corner. Diego went off the racetrack a little bit, but again, slick tires on a wet racetrack. It's bound to happen. Didn't impact too much. But the biggest thing is when you're the fourth driver in line, because if you noticed for the start of that second video, being the leader, and this is something that we can get into more on the technicality side of things, like being the first guy around Newcastle in general is pretty hard. We've heard drivers mention in the past that leading around Newcastle is difficult because of the dust that gets on the racetrack naturally.
Mhm.
But being the leader at Newcastle or any racetrack for that matter with slick tires on a wet racetrack is one of the hardest things you could do as a driver because you have no marker at all. So the guys in second, third, fourth, whatever it may be, can kind of see where the leader's braking and make their judgment there. So Diego had a bit of a gap on Kaleb into the scoreboard corner, and then Kaleb closed the gap right back up almost immediately. So did Terlecki, and then from there, it's really just a crapshoot, right? It's whoever can find the grip in the last couple of corners. And I think Kaleb thought he found grip. And I was very shocked when I saw that happen. That I was like, okay, he went for it. And I think in this situation, the last lap of a heat race, there probably isn't a need to send it that hard into the corner. But I think it was a misjudgment, right? Like, am I surprised that it wasn't a penalty? Yes. Was it malicious? Absolutely not. I know, and anybody can attest to this. Like, if you know Kaleb Gafara, he's a clean driver. He doesn't mean to do that. You wouldn't throw your own race away to take somebody else out. Really, no driver does that. But especially, Kaleb, for anybody who knows him like personally, he's a good person. So I think it's just one of those situations where misjudged it completely. He saw drivers, break earlier than he would have expected, and he thought, you know what, I see an open gap. Let's see if there's grip on the bottom of the racetrack. There wasn't, and then, like Emory said, like even if Diego wasn't there, I think probably the fence would have stopped him. I mean, he went into there pretty hard. It's just an unfortunate situation. I think anything more than that, the first two racing incidents. I think this one a little bit more, or the blame is on Kaleb. Diego did nothing wrong. Diego was just going through the corner. But yeah, I think it's one of those situations where it's slicks on a wet racetrack. Things like this are going to happen. And it's one thing that I think Kaleb can look back on this race and say what he could have changed is probably, maybe take the fourth place and kind of run with it rather than try to maybe gain a spot or two because, like Emory said, that corner, even in the dry, is maybe an opportunity to pass one go-kart, let alone two. And in this case, he almost went for three by accident.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, he didn't mean to do it. Anybody who knows Kaleb knows that.
Yeah, and I think also, like, I guess if it was one go-kart ahead and you just kind of slid into him, like, I think first off, no malintent at all with that. I don't think that Kaleb went in the corner, so I was like, all right, Diego's target X. I'm going for this gap. I don't care what happens. Like, if he goes off, then so be it. I don't think that's the case. I think Kaleb's a really good driver, really good racecraft. I think he knows what he's doing. I do think if you look at it from the side of, like, judging the move, even if it's one where you have the gap there, even if you kind of trust the grip that's there, it's kind of a risk versus reward type of deal. Like, from experience, Alex, and kind of seeing how this race went as well, that when it gets wet, like you mentioned, it is so hard to judge the conditions. That's why Diego kind of took it more conservative. It's why basically that whole lap was them kind of trading who was on the lead, who was running off the track. So I understand the want to be a bit more aggressive in that situation, but I think that Kaleb seeing that gap, kind of going for that gap, like if it was one kart where he just kind of slid up and made contact, I think you get away with that, no penalty, no real fault because that happens. There's naturally going to be some differences in how much you trust the go kart and how much the go kart actually sticks in there. I think just kind of the egregiousness of the move in terms of, like, at the end of the day, he was about three kart lengths back from Diego when he goes for the move. That's roughly 3.5 tenths difference in the braking zone and OKN. It's kind of like on that scale, that much of a differential in the braking zone and trusting it is kind of, I don't want to, like, again, I can understand where Kaleb's mind was at. I can understand why he kind of thought the move might have been on. I just think it's a bit of a over-ambitious move for that point in the race, considering it's a heat race, considering you've still got a lap more to survive after that. As you saw 3 quarters later, Keikai ended up driving off the track from the lead as well.
Yeah.
I think all of that stuff kind of plays into it. It was a move that could have maybe gone a bit on if everything had been right. I think the move 3 wide into getting past Terlecki and also Keikai would have been on, but to try to get all 3 there in one was a bit overambitious. And again, I don't think it was malicious from Kaleb, but I do think it's one that you kind of have to look at that, and even understanding the conditions, even understanding that no one has a true reference for the breaking point. It's one I think if he wanted, or if he could have had it back, he probably would take it back.
Yeah, no, for sure. I remember walking over to his tent after the day had ended on Saturday, and he was like, "Yeah, I just got into the corner, hit the brakes, and turned right. I was full lock, and I was like, well." From his words, he was like, "Well, I wasn't turning because my hands are already turned right, and I just knew." I was like, it wasn't going to end well from what Kaleb G told me. But I mean, again, Gaffer is a super good kid, really nothing against him, and love seeing him at the racetrack and hanging out with him, and him and his dad and Greg Bell, all great people. But yeah, he was he said it himself. Just got a little bit over ambitious there in the end. But I really don't think he tried to go for all 3 of them whenever he saw the gap. And it's just whenever it's raining and you're on slicks, you have nowhere else to go. I mean, Alex, you've been in that point wherever you're driving on slick weather tires on a very wet racetrack or damp racetrack, even at that, where there's some patches of slick asphalt and there's some patches of dry asphalt. It changes a little bit, especially in a race. Whenever you're going wheel to wheel with some of the best guys in the nation, it's kind of hard to stop yourself, especially when you see a gap that you're going to go for as a racing driver, right? So, yeah, it was just an unfortunate accident there that happened. And speaking to Kaleb G about it as well, I mean, he was he took the fault for it. So good to see that a kid that young, is really was aware of whether it was a mistake or whatever it was. But besides that, I don't want to overshadow the great racing that we had throughout the class, as well, throughout the weekend. But Nicholas Terlecki, like we said earlier, took the win, and there was still great racing action throughout the race. There was a little bit of a spread throughout the field. I mean, something we have to mention. There was gaps all over. Again, Kaleb G was able to get back up to second on the podium. So, but as whenever we come to this OKN class, it was just a little bit different than what we saw, especially with Newcastle being a little bit of a bigger track. We knew it was going to be hard to pass, and one of the big things that we saw this weekend was just that little bit of the field spread that Emory knew was one of the things coming into this weekend that we were going to see, especially at Newcastle.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. You said it right. The field spread, for one, is something that Emory mentioned last week on the podcast about. It's a common thing around Newcastle. It's a track that's fairly, actually, one of the best tracks that we go to in terms of how many passing opportunities that there are. But with it being such a large racetrack, so many different gear options, setup options that you can do. That's what kind of creates that field spread, and that's what we saw throughout the weekend. But nonetheless, I mean, for most of the race, especially the OKN side of things, we saw battles for the lead. At least 1 or 2 times in each of the motos and the feature race. Obviously, midway through that one, where Terlecki got the lead and didn't look back. I think one more thing to add, because I don't want to touch on it too much because it's obvious, right? Slicks in the rain is difficult. I think Josh Hotz actually said it pretty well when we were talking to him about when Emory asked him about how is he so quick in the rain. He said, "Listen, put the rain tires on, I'm pretty confident. Put the slicks on, not as much." For some drivers, they love that slicks in the rain, full lock, understeer until I find grip. Some drivers, need to find that grip. And so that's what you see as well, right? We saw kind of Ramos, Terlecki take it easy through that final couple corners. Really no need to throw it off the racetrack with a lap and a half to go. And you see some drivers, maybe with a mentality of, I'm going to go out there and hope there's grip. And if there isn't, I'm on the grass. So I always find it really interesting to see different drivers' approaches when rainfall hits the racetrack, when they have slicks, because it really kind of shows you who can kind of get that confidence immediately, who maybe needs that lap or so. But I think, like Josh said, it's one of those things where mentally it's tough to kind of change your mindset of, okay, there may not be grip. With a rain tire, you pretty much feel like you're on a slick anyways. Rain tires nowadays are so good that you can go into the rain as long as you're doing a normal rain line, or even sometimes nowadays you can do sort of a dry / rain line hybrid, and they'll grip up pretty good. But you put slicks on the reins, and all of a sudden it is like driving ice. You have one line that you can drive, and if you put a tire wrong, what happened to Kaleb will happen to anybody, where you get on the brakes and nothing happens, and nothing will happen. So it's just one of those things, right? I think, again, don't want to touch on it too much. One of those things, like Kaleb said, got on the brakes, turned the wheel, no reaction by the go-kart, and it was never going to happen, because when you have slicks on the rain, as the rain was beginning to fall pretty heavy at that point in that heat race, so it made for a pretty treacherous final lap, as we saw later on in that race.
Yeah. And then Emory, touching back on that point with the big field spread, it wasn't just like that whenever we saw the actual OKNs out there, but it was a little bit of the same with the OKNJs whenever, you talk about the field being spread out, although we did have a last lap pass with Chase Gassioli getting ahead of John Antonino. But again, I mean, we saw the field spread out just that little bit more. And then last year when we were at MCC, the field was super close. At Pitt, Wheeler was able to get away, but Newcastle, again, one of the tracks where we see that field just spread out a little bit more, because there was a couple of races, especially in OKNJ and in the OKN class, where the field was spread out and then kind of bunch up, but as the races progress, being, I guess, for the OKN class, being the pro class, towards the end, everybody was just kind of running out there on their own.
Yeah, and I think, again, like, there's a few things that play a factor in that. So one, the OKN's the least draft reliant class. One, because it has more power, and two, because you're hitting the limiter down the straight, and so that kind of limits the differential of the draft and the draft effect. But the second thing too is, or one of the other things as well, is that OKN is naturally going to be tougher to drive. I think especially in the OKNJ category, you saw more driver variance, to put it bluntly, and more kind of difference in how the drivers were taking the corners, how they were set up, and how consistent they were, especially the consistency part. And when you're not consistent and the draft isn't playing a big role, you can find yourself kind of having that sort of gap. I think we saw it to a lesser degree in the OKN side of things as well, in terms of the consistency. And then the other thing as well that plays into it is there's not a lot of places on that layout where you can make a pass and not lose a significant amount of time, especially with the power band of the OKN engine and how it struggles out of the corners on a low RPM basis. Like, when you're making a pass and you're kind of diving it on in there, you're going to lose more time on exit. And so I think when you have all those factors, it leads to more spread out fields. I don't think it's something that's going to continue out through the rest of the year. I think we saw that last year. I mean, even in KA last year with this layout, Josh Campbell was able to walk away from the field. I think in KA it's kind of more of a draft dependent layout, but in general, I think that this is going to be the most spread out the field's going to be all year, and it's entirely track dependent.
Yeah, I completely agree about the track dependent and everything else. But this has been the end of our first segment. When we come back from this quick commercial break, we're going to talk about shifters, the move of the weekend, and whatever questions you guys may have. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break from shopakr.com.
Colin, I need a new 219 chain. I need a 77 tooth sprocket. I need some more chain lube, and I need it probably as soon as tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, are you even listening? We need this to run this weekend.
Want anything else?
What do you mean?
I already got it in the car on Acceleration Kart Racing's online store, bro. All orders over $200 get free shipping.
Oh, throw in a set of tires.
Done.
Everything you need, all in one place, and shipped to your door for free on orders of $200 or more. Exclusions apply. Shop AKR.com.
Well, welcome back to this week's episode of KC Grid Talk, episode number 13, where we're debriefing the Stars Championship Series. Myself, Kaleb Vieska, Emory Lida here on my right. And then below us, Alexander Searle, who's actually below us on the map as well, being from Florida. Myself being from Texas, Emory being from North Carolina. So, yeah, I mean, it all works out perfectly. And Alex, you're muted, so I actually can't hear.
I was expecting a short joke there.
Below us on the earth as well.
Yeah, I was expecting a
All
short
right.
joke. There it is. There it is.
Also, wait a second. I'm pretty sure Kaleb is. Wait, Alex, are you at in Fort Lauderdale right now?
Yes.
Damn, I was gonna say if you're in Gainesville, I think Kaleb was wrong on the geography point as well. But
Nah, dude, my geography is absolutely stellar here.
Yeah,
you know?
you got
that was an
you got-
accident.
you got saved by the fact that Alex is in Fort Lauderdale. So
Yeah, he didn't
well
mean
done.
to do that.
Hey, listen, bro. I took human geography AP freshman year of high school.
Me too.
What do you
I
get
don't
on the
think
exam?
I don't think I passed the AP exam.
Wait, you
I
don't
got a
think?
5.
No. Actually, I think I got a 3. I don't
Can't
remember.
touch me. What can I say? I'm
Doesn't
built
matter.
different.
Elite.
Hey, whatever. Anyways, one thing I have a little bit more knowledge about is actually star shifter. So we're going to talk about that instead of human geography and geography, whether it's on a map or whatever it is. Who cares? But one thing I do know about this weekend, AJ Myers, Mr. Newcastle himself. I don't know what else, what else put it. Magic Man. What other nicknames do we have for him? But he dominated this weekend in that shifter class. I mean, no ifs, ands, or buts, no other words about it. Safe to say my predictions about the weekend were right, like I always am. It's just hard. Actually, no, my shifter prediction was right. Everything else was kind of
I
iffy.
swear, every time I change up my shifter predictions, I get it wrong. It's impressive.
I just can't remember the last time I was wrong.
Last week.
Yeah, last week.
Yeah. I picked. I'm trying to think of the last time I picked a winner in a shifter, because I genuinely don't think I've had a single winner prediction be right this entire year.
Who did you pick for OKN this past week?
Gundler, and that was okay until the final.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. Yeah.
And, yeah.
Alex, who'd you pick?
Ramos.
That's
Womp womp. I picked Paulie and whatever.
I think my last, because now that you say it, I think my last time getting shifter correct was my Josh Conker prediction last year at Winter Tour.
You picked Jay Irwin, no?
Oh, I picked Irwin. Okay, Irwin, but I think like before Irwin, I think like I was on a cold spell.
Yeah. See, the only driver that I seem to predict wins right with is Donovan Bonilla. That's like.
This is true.
If it's Dono, I get it every time. If it's not Dono, I can't pick for the life of me.
Yeah.
So apologies to Jay Irwin for this weekend, because as Josh Conker won from round 1, whenever I pick someone, it usually does not go very well.
Yeah. Yeah, and for some reason, you guys just forgot that AJ Myers was a shiesty dog around Newcastle Motorsports Park and walked the field all weekend. So if you guys have any apologies, I'll take them.
No, I don't have an apology actually, because the segment last week was it wasn't like our normal prediction, top 5. It was bold predictions. So Emory and I were like, all right, we're going to give them bold predictions. Kaleb goes, here's my bold prediction.
Myers wins
Hey, bro. It was bold enough for me, all right?
That's
Kaleb looked back at his recent predictions and said, I need one. I need to get one.
That's like putting money on 35 to 36 numbers in roulette and then like massively celebrating a win when it happens.
I actually do that. You got to celebrate the little things. I was in Europe last summer, and I for some reason I have all my numbers spread out whenever I play roulette. It's my birthday, my mom's birthday, my dad's birthday, my nephew's birthday, my brother, my sister, whatever it is. I don't have a sister, but like all the birthdays I have them spread out, and then my year I was born, my racing number, the racing number I had for one race, and whatever it is, right? And whenever I win, I'm like happy about the little wins, right? Because you win that $5 or $2. You gotta be happy about the little things. And I was happy about the little.
Then when you lose, you go broke. Don't do that, kids.
Exactly. Don't bet $100 on red is what I learned last summer. So. Anyways,
no comment.
We're here for. AJ Myers dominated in shifter. A couple of drivers had rougher weekends. Jay Irwin unfortunately DNF'd in the first corner. The factory kart team, a good podium, I guess, finish for Billy Musgrave, and Josh Conker. And we'll actually start with that, right? For the factory kart team, the JMF guys, good to see them up there all the way from Canada. Some of their friends, the Canadian geese, were at the racetrack as well, which is pretty cool to see. And that's what you get every time we go to Newcastle Motorsports Park. But I mean, how about that for that factory kart JMF team, seeing them up there on the podium, just adding a little bit to the manufacturer variants that we've seen all year?
Yeah, I think for the factory kart team, for JMF, they've really, the JMF boys especially, they figured it out. I mean, for being such a new team here, a rough weekend, I'd say, in Charlotte. That being said, I mean, they were still pretty quick. We knew the pace would be there, especially on Billy's side. Billy's always been pretty quick here on Newcastle. Josh too, but Josh was still working around some things. Obviously, he hasn't been in the kart that often since last year, Supernats. So still working around some gremlins for him, but he seemed a lot more comfortable this weekend in the go-kart. And Charlotte, the pace was there in the practices and the qualifying, and the races not so much, got involved in a few incidents. But this weekend, Josh was quick from the get-go. In that race, the pace was there. I mean, took the fight to Billy towards the end of that race as well. So good to see those guys kind of battle it out for second. For Billy, though, again, just working on that factory car. I mean, it's a rocket, obviously, especially with Billy behind the wheel, with Josh behind the wheel as well. So they're always a factor whenever they show up at the racetrack. And I think this is not really a shock to me, actually, I'd say, in terms of just how good those drivers are, and how quick they've been at Newcastle, and especially with Musgrave. He's had a few years of development around Newcastle with the factory kart. So again, impressive to see what they did, especially compared to AJ Myers, who has a ton of success around Newcastle Motorsports Park. But a second and third for the factory kart guys is I'd say they take that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, I think for Josh Conker to be able to get out of sort of the upper midfield scrum and kind of be all by himself in third, and even challenging Billy late in the race, I think that's a big confidence booster, because, like, you kind of expect AJ to be all the way up at the front. You know that Billy's going to be fast. And then it's kind of like a mix up of six or eight guys that could be in the top three, depending on how the setup goes and how acclimated they get to that racetrack. And so for Josh to kind of be a step above of that mix, above the likes of Talon Yackel, Vincenzo Saracino, Justin White, Ian Quinn, Jay Irwin all week long, regardless of the incidents that they had, to be consistently quicker than those guys, no matter what the pace was, and then ultimately paid off with a podium. I think it's impressive for me for Conker. And then, of course, on Billy's side as well, continue to develop the factory kart. For both of them on the JMF side of things, is a solid step forward. And again, like, I think this builds pretty well. It's a track that Josh has been good at in the past. It's a track that Billy obviously knows very well. You go to Cincinnati, that's another track that Josh tends to do very well at. And I think that, in this sort of first national campaign for the JMF boys, I think that it's going along pretty well so far, and especially after this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you guys said it best. Not too bad for those JMF guys. Was walking, back and forth as much as I could throughout the paddock all weekend, and that JMF team was in good spirits all weekend long, and they were happy to be at the racetrack and happy that they could drive to a track, that's not too far away. So good to see all the big Canadian contingency out on the racetrack this past weekend, but they weren't the only ones who had some good drives. Talon Yackel as well. I mean, a weekend where that Sodi Racing USA machine came to life, was inside of the top 5, P4, kind of just running on his own. But, to say the least, Talon had, I think, considering the guys that were ahead of him and without a teammate for Talon this past weekend, did had a really good weekend, to say the least. I see Josh Hotz pop in our private chat here, still hanging around and watching from behind the scenes. But yeah, I mean, not a bad weekend for Talon Yackel. I mean, a weekend where he came to life, in that Sodi Racing USA machine. Isambard had a lot to do with that as well. I saw them walking around and talking a lot about whether it was setup or whatever it was. But good to see Talon back up in the top 5, and then Andy Rule as well, after being out of the seat for, I believe, leading up to I think it was Charlotte. She was out of the seat for 6 months, I think she said, and then going inside of the top 5 or 6, not sure. I think it was top 5. I can pull up the results here with the trusty Stars Discord, but I think it was top 5 for Annie. So I mean, to say the least, like it was a pretty good showing for Talon and Annie. So wasn't too bad. Annie finished 6th. Sorry, Ian Quinn finished 5th. But either ways, like it was a good weekend for both Annie and Talon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I do want to toot my own horn a little bit on this because I did say Annie would have a good weekend last time out. So, as bad as the Jay Irwin pick aged, I will say I did get it right on the Annie side of things. So, no, I mean, it was good for her. I think it was also good for Michael Riccio. I know he bit the steering column in the second half of that final. So, all those things ended up going kind of against Riccio, but still pull up off a top 7 was impressive. For Ian Quinn side of things, another rough Saturday for him in the motos, but on Sunday, again, picking up the pieces, making up a number of spots for Justin White as well to break down in qualifying, start dead last, and work his way eventually up into the top 10 by the end of the final. That's tough to do in a shifter, and especially, Newcastle, a track that there's a lot of overtaking opportunities, but you lose so much time making sud passes. So for both Quinn and Justin White as well to get into the top 10, considering where they started, was impressive, as well as with Annie, as well as pretty much all of the top 10, I would say, would come away relatively happy with their weekend, considering what the expectations would be.
Yeah, I think that entire midfield scrap was the highlight of that shifter race final in terms of just how epic it was. I'd say, I mean, the battle between Annie, Riccio, Gavin Bailiff in the mix, Ian Quinn as well, Nicholson there before he had the DNF midway through that final. So I think that midfield scrap was great. And like Emory said, I think anybody inside that top 10, really that 4th, 5th on back would take the result they got because anybody could have finished in either position if the passes went a different way. So for Annie Rule, like you said, Emory, last week you predicted it, she'd have a good weekend. Really impressive, especially because I know at Charlotte she was struggling a lot with her neck, still having some pain, being out of the seat for so long. A track like Newcastle, it's not much better on the neck. So I think for her, just one of those things where to kind of bounce back and say, you know what, I'm feeling up to it again. Out of the seat for 6 months, like you said, Kaleb, back in the seat in Charlotte, then back again at Newcastle. Really took the fight. Finished top 6 in a pro shifter class is really impressive to do, especially with some of the drivers that she was ahead of as well, including her teammate. So really impressed with what she did this weekend. I think Ian Quinn, again, another solid performance, really, doubling down on what we saw at Charlotte. A little bit less, pace than what we saw at Charlotte, but still really impressive. What Ian Quinn has been able to do this year in the pro shifter category. I think Gavin Bailiff had a pretty strong weekend as well. Justin White, like you said, climbed through the field in that final as well. So ultimately, that midfield scrap was the battle of the final, and really throughout the entire weekend as a whole. And it kind of brings me enjoy kind of watching the shifter class blossom as it always does, and kind of say it makes me look forward to the races we have later on in the year with the shifter class, with how close with the parity that we have in the field, I'd say.
Yeah, and they really weren't the only ones that were working their way up the field. I mean, Joseph Lowney was up there like in 6th at one point in that race. Charlie Steins, a lot of other drivers, right? Just kind of getting in the mix, and it's good to see, like a lot of drivers starting to work their way inside of the top 10 and kind of figure out what they've been missing. Right, some of the drivers that perhaps we haven't talked to as much, but they were they were getting up there, like Wesley Gunler in the OKN class, and Lorenko or whoever it could be. It was the same thing in the shifter class, right? A lot of drivers were getting into the mix and starting to take the fight up and to some of the guys like in the midfield. And it's not going to be long until they catch up to AJ or whoever it is by the time we get to MCC in a couple of weeks time, a month time, I should say. But I mean, good to see that class, continue to grow. I believe 30 shifters this week. So round of applause to the Stars team this past weekend, having that many numbers. And that was, pretty cool to see from all of them. But I mean, Jay Irwin, one of the drivers who had a rough weekend, unfortunate for Jay, just got taken out at the start. And it seemed like they were just fighting the cart at the start of the weekend. But yeah, I mean, unfortunate on the side for Jay. Great kid. If you guys saw the Stars Championship series video where it was like the reach in the box that myself and Kyle Cuthbertson did on the Thursday, I believe. So, I mean, it was pretty cool to see. Just a little bit of personality out of Jay, and he's a funny guy. He's
I got
a
a question
funny
for you
guy.
on that.
Go ahead.
How long until we do that with a real snake in the box?
Hey,
'Cause
I am
I saw-
terrified of snakes. I am absolutely terrified of snakes, and I wouldn't do it to a driver. Like, I don't know if you saw Annie.
It was no,
so-
she was
so-
pretty worked up about it.
So there's some behind the scenes clips that we'll probably release someday. But Annie's like heart rate was up to like 159, like before we even started, and it was like she was like freaking out, and I was like, dude, like nothing's alive, nothing's gonna hurt you. But she was so worried about the fact that Gavin had to wash his hands. So I mean, it was all right. It was funny, but never. I think if it's not something I would do, like I wouldn't make another driver do it, I guess.
You've got a nice heart, Caleb. I
Hey,
appreciate that.
I'm a nice guy.
We need to do one with the KC boys then, with live
Stop
animals.
talking, pal.
This,
Stop
uh,
talking, pal.
I think the real question is who would be the most reactive and who would be the least reactive of anyone.
Kaleb.
Most reactive is Caleb. I
He
think
just admitted
Brandon.
to it.
I think Brandon would probably be the
I
least
would-
reactive.
I would definitely be the most.
Yeah,
I would
Brandon.
definitely- I would definitely be the most. If you guys watch the stream and hear me like scream while Emory's mid sentence because someone just wrecked, like I would be the most reactive. I'm just like whoa, whoa, whoa. Or I don't know. Whoa times 3. Typical from KC announcers. If you're not whoa times 3, then what are you doing?
Whoa cubed.
Whoa cube. But yeah. We're gonna send off this quick commercial break. When we come back and go into the move of the weekend, and then I guess I had another point that I wanted to talk about, but we're gonna find out whenever we come back from this quick commercial break. So let's hear a quick word from Shop AKR, and then when we come back, myself, Emory, and Alex will show you the move of the weekend.
Brandon, why are there all these charges for just over $200 from Acceleration Kart Racing's website?
That's because AKR gives you free shipping on orders of $200 or more within the continental US.
Okay, but I thought you were just getting a pair of gloves. That's what, $70?
But if I'm getting a new pair of gloves, I might as well get a new pair of shoes to match. And then on top of that, I'll get a neck brace because with the shipping, it's basically free.
Yeah, I do not think the math checks out on that.
Everything you need, all in one place and shipped to your door for free for orders of $200 or more. Exclusions apply. Spend responsibly. Shop AKR.com.
Well, welcome back to episode number 13 of KC Grid Talk. Myself, Kaleb Vieska, as always, the most dashing of the three here. Emory Lida on my right. Obviously, all jokes aside. Emory Lida on my right. aka Aladdin, because he's a magician, Shiesty Dog, Mystic Mac, Emory Aladdin Lida, and then Alex Searle. We call him Lil Al because he's so lil. Anyways, all jokes aside, we get set to go for the closing segment of this show. We're just at an hour, so we had a lot of good moves this weekend. Boys, a lot of good moves. I would say the move that Paulie Massimino did on myself and Xander Clements on the highway was probably up there for move of the weekend. At last week's episode of KC Grid Talk. But no senior driver got it this weekend. It was one of the junior drivers. I don't know if we discussed this, but I think Emory. It was Jaden Francisco. Jaden Francisco had a crazy move.
Micro driver then.
Micro driver.
Yes.
Micro star. Oh, we did discuss it.
Yeah, we discussed it, but I thought you said a junior star. I was like, it's micro.
Hey, it don't matter. This move was crazy. Let's watch
It's
it.
still sick either way.
Hey, it was badass. Let's watch it.
Looks back. Goes Kubinski's there. Kubinski follows Burgess to the bottom of the racetrack. There goes Francisco looking to go through. He's able to get clear on Kubinski. Flores looking to go through as well. Kubinski looking to get Flores back. Not close enough as of yet. Does Francisco have a good run here? It's going to be a drag race all the way to the line. Francisco on the outside. Gets it done.
Hey, shiesty move, Jaden Francisco. What a move! Got it done around the outside. Took that pre-final win, I believe it was, and then won the final as well. So, I mean, a good drive for Jaden Francisco to say the least. But what a move! I'm 20 years old, and I would have never. I'm still not able to do something like that. So that's crazy to see.
Yeah, no, the guts of that kid to make that type of move is insane. I've only seen a handful of last corner moves on this layout. In KA, it's the type of move that generally gets you a big talking to in the scale line, unless it's on the last lap of the race. To do it around the outside of that corner is unheard of. So, no, it was really impressive from Francisco. And I think if you're Zane's driver coach, if you're under the Sodi tent, you're probably like, dude, just chuck him off the track, honestly. But
That's
still,
not nice.
on the clean side of things, though, it was a really spectacular move. And I think on the purest form of racing, that was as clean as it gets, as sensational as it gets. And also, don't forget, too, the move into the chicane. To be able to make that move, to get up to second, and then have enough time, have enough speed to be able to get up around the outside, plan it out, and make that move effectively. Like, it's super impressive stuff. So, Jaden Francisco had an awesome weekend. Kudos to him, because he is an absolute star for the Ryan Perry Motorsports boys. And it was really kind of great to see him as kind of a new hot shoe in Microsoft, so to speak. Of course, with Perry having Parker Ives in the seat last year. This was their first real big success this weekend on the micro side of things. And I think that Jaden Francisco deserved the move of the week, and also a big round of applause for his efforts all weekend long.
Yeah, for sure. Round of applause, Emory. Thank you. Round of applause. Jaden Francisco had a great weekend, and besides all these guys, being here for me, thank you very much to everyone in the comments. I'm here for you guys as well. So, enough aside. Thank you, Matt. Matt's real. He's not going to Pittsburgh in a couple of weeks. I actually don't know who this is, but hey, love you too, Combat. Blessings. Love everybody. But we do have a couple of stuff coming up this weekend. We have Grassroots with the Indy Kart Challenge. I believe none of us will be there, unfortunately. Emory, are you working this weekend?
No, I'm not.
Alex,
Even
you
if I
working this weekend?
No.
Yeah.
I'm
Even
not
if I
either.
didn't have the flu, I still wouldn't be on the schedule for this weekend, unfortunately.
Oh man, what are you doing this week?
Gotta take care of my dog, actually, because my parents are going to Europe this weekend. So shout out to my dad.
Party at Emory Lida's house this weekend. Pull up North Carolina. So we'll see everybody at Emory's house. You throw a rager this week. No, I'm kidding. On jokes aside.
Into your zip code. Bring some pizza if you can.
And some medicine.
Some more Tamiflu would be great, actually.
Hey, that's great. But racing, any of you guys? I know Emory, you're doing USPCast.
Yes, yeah. So I'll be back behind the wheel of on Josh's wagons. I'm really hoping that the success from this weekend carries over for them, and I can just kind of ride the coattails a little bit. Because they make me look a lot better when they do well. I try not to make them look worse. So no, we'll be back behind the wheel in Dowsman. Should be a good one. Looking forward to it. And yeah, that's it for my side. I know that Alex probably has a lot more fun stuff going on.
Yeah, I unfortunately am gonna miss MCC because I'll be in Canada at Mosport, because that's where Canada is, and
that's where Mosport is. Or
yeah,
I forgot. Anyways,
it's in Canada.
You mix it up, pal.
Yeah, that's an ongoing joke now. But yeah, F1600s there at Mosport. Rounds like 7, 8, and 9 of the championship series now for Toyota Tires. So yeah, back with the BGR boys, looking to put together another solid points round for me, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, and for myself, I guess not too big of news, but I'll be racing again at CKNA Pittsburgh, as Cameron Reed said. I'll be out there with the for Chase Gasly. Hey, good job to Chase this weekend. Last lap pass. We'll give a round of applause to Chase. Had a good pass there.
He won an OKNJ.
Yeah,
super impressive.
P1. So
P1.
A good job for Chase this weekend. Last lap pass, but I will be racing Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, not this weekend at the DFW Triple Crown. I was at the first one, but yeah, I have some stuff to do. But yeah, I'll be racing pretty soon. Back in the 206 with the CRG LSR Motorsports guys. So be pretty chill. Thanks, Michael. Michael had a good weekend as well. So everybody, just been good. Everybody in good spirits. So we are off this weekend. Us at least here. Emory, Alex, and myself. I believe Kaleb Smock is going to be on the mic for Indy Kart Challenge. So they'll be out there, but we'll come back next week for episode number 14, where we're going to preview the Motorsports Country Club of Cincinnati, where the SCUSA Pro Tour returns and their pro show, and the likes of Norberg, I believe Formal, and a couple of others make their returns to, I guess, KC on air action. And we'll bring you guys all the previews and all the thoughts leading up to the Motorsports Country Club of Cincinnati in, I guess, a week's time. Yeah, in a week's time.
6 days.
Yeah, so we'll hopefully be back on Tuesday to our regularly scheduled program on Grid Talk Tuesday. This, for some reason, it was, Grid Talk Wednesday, but we'll be back for Grid Talk Tuesday. It's even better than Taco Tuesday, even better than all the other stuff people say. But final thoughts, boys. Emory, Alex.
Yeah, I really hope that by this time next week or whenever we're doing the pod that I'm not halfway dying. But no, it was a good weekend at Newcastle. I think a lot of good racing. I think the pro show, again, having 287 total entries in for stars and having the shifter field that we had was super impressive. And I think it lines up well for the rest of the season. We've already seen 2 really good races. I'm excited to see what Cincinnati's like. On the other side of things as well, I think next week going to preview the second round of the pro tour and the pro show on their end of things is going to be exciting as well. And I mean, there's a lot of good racing. KC Summer Series, well up and underway. Some would call it the KC 6 Series after this week, but hey, we're back on the road. We're thriving. Broadcasts are going well. Don't ask about behind the scenes sometimes, but, we'll be back. A lot of good racing coming up, and I'm excited to continue to cover it.
True. Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to echo what Emory said there. KC Summer Series well underway. Stars provides, once again, an amazing series, amazing racing all throughout. And then I can't wait for the pro show next week as well at MCC. Unfortunately, won't be there, like I said, but we'll be tuning in, as always, for all the events that we put on as a crew, for the events that I can't make. But I should be at most of those KC Summer Series events, so that'll be a good thing. Get to see the boys again. So looking forward to that. And yeah, Newcastle once again provides, Stars provides, and awesome racing all weekend long.
Yeah, so just to close things off here, a huge shout out to Joe Janowski and Christian Marsh putting on an amazing event at Newcastle Motorsports Park. Absolutely delivered. Over 287 entries. It was great. The Masters classes, the racing was good in those classes as well. I mean, 25 KA Masters and about 20-something Pro Master Shifters. So that was pretty sick to see. So again, it was great. We had a great weekend at the Stars Championship Series. I mean, besides the fact that, half of us were sick and whatever it was, we're off to a start. It's always a good weekend when you're at the racetrack. We could be we could be in different places. We could be somewhere else. So we're so thankful that we get to be out at the racetrack and doing what we're doing. It's a huge privilege to see, great people every single weekend. So again, we do this for you guys, for all the fans that, tune in on Tuesday, Wednesday nights, or, waking up early to watch our streams. And, we appreciate it. Doesn't go unseen. And we do it all for you guys in all seriousness. So, kisses and hugs to all our fans. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight and then throughout the week. So, yeah, always a pleasure for myself, Emory Lyden, and Alex Searle. We'll be back next week on Tuesday, hopefully, where we're going to talk about everything related to the SCUSA Pro Tour and the Motorsports Country Club of Cincinnati. But from all of us here at KC Grid Talk, it's been a great night catching up with you guys, and we'll see you guys next week. Good night.